And we'll have to circle back to this, won't we?
Let's hope the Mariners win the division so they don't have to worry about playing there in a short series. Because I'm going to say a wild card series at Kauffman. Sorry.
Yeah.
Time for next year.
I agree.
Are we gonna buy into a conspiracy? So the YouTube's fired up, by the way. So actually, before I raise my point, welcome in everybody. Marine Lair Podcast, Sunday Night Live on Instagram and on YouTube. I already see a bunch of you watching us on Instagram. We're also live on YouTube. Go check us out on YouTube. If you're not already subscribed, throw us a subscribe. Watch some of our videos. We have all of our past episodes, all of our segments on there. And if you're watching on YouTube, head on over to our Instagram. If you're not already following, give us a follow. We really appreciate it. All of our socials at Marine Lair Pod. And then after all that, if you really want us to answer your question, head on over to YouTube, send us a super chat, and we'll be sure to answer your question. Now, the conspiracy that friend of the podcast, Ty Dane Gonzalez, host of the Locked On Mariners podcast throughout there, he tweeted out a graphic of the Royals' home road splits on offense. Are we buying anything into that? I mean, there were some insinuations today online about how much better the Royals are at home.
Like, do we think the Royals are cheating? Is that the topic of conversation here?
Well, I'm not leveling an accusation myself, but I did see that thrown out there.
It is wild that, as you put in the reaction today on social media, which if you guys haven't checked that out, go check it out, that you said they're essentially the 1927 Yankees at home and the 2012 Astros on the road. That's the drastic split.
Yeah. So it's not great. Not good for the Mariners. And again, not good if they have to go there in a playoff series. Though, let's steer the conversation this way. We see some comments and some questions coming in. Feel free to fire away any sort of question you have about this past week of Mariners baseball, a 500 week of Mariners baseball. But I titled this live, Let's Talk Trades. You and I have spent the last couple of weeks talking about more trades than we have at any point of the season. The deadline's still 2 months away. But I think these trades, as we see what the Mariners' weaknesses and strengths are through these first 2 months, we have a pretty clear idea of what they need. And it's been pretty clear. They need bullpen, and they need a couple of bats. So my ask to the listeners, both on Instagram and on YouTube, send us some trade proposals. I'm curious. Who do you think the Mariners should go out there and trade for? Who's your number one? Who's your number two? Like, again, bats-wise, they might need two. And then who are you giving up in return? Who are you comfortable trading in this return? I think this will be a fun exercise. Tucker or Vladdy? Yeah. I think the Astros lost again today, Lyle. Kyle Tucker had to watch that one on the IL and think, less and less likely, man.
Yeah, I mean, wait, less and less likely? What do you
Less
mean
and
they
less
keep losing?
likely that he's going to stay in Houston. Sorry.
Well, they have to trade him somewhere, won't they? And if the Phillies are the team that trades for Luis Robert, who knows? Tucker's got to go somewhere.
Can we react to that rumor that came out that was reported by Bob Nightingale that the asking price right now for Luis Robert is higher than it is for what Juan Soto's first trade package was. The first one, the one that was Mackenzie Gore, CJ Abrams, James Wood, who's about to debut, and then Harleen Susana. Is that right? I think they have those four.
You left out Robert Hassel.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And Robert Hassel. Yeah. Stacked. It's a pretty stacked group. So all those guys were what Juan Soto cost the first time, and the White Sox are currently asking for more. So just ripping it off, if the Mariners were to actually pay that price, we're talking Colt.
No, I was going to say, like, they're not doing that. They're not trading.
They're not, but I'm saying what it would be if people were curious what it was. It would be Colt, Harry, Cole, Young.
I think, yeah. Like, and just stop right there because
right there. Right. Exactly. That would be the package.
So they're not going to do it. So it's that simple. They're not trading that much away for a guy that's on the field 100 games a year. As good as, actually, not even that. As good as Robert is. So,
right.
So there you go. I will say that, yeah, I think the two areas as questions start to file in, we can start to answer some here in just a minute. But I think it's clear, like you said, they're probably going to need bullpen help and they're going to need offensive help. And there's some internal bullpen help they'll get, right? I mean, it's been made pretty clear at this point that Logan Evans is probably less than a month away from debuting, maybe a month away. They're targeting around the All-Star break is what it sounds like. So there's one in-house option, and that's going to help. You get Gabe Spire and Gregory Santos back, that will help. But even with all that, because that's all going to be some major reinforcement, I think they still have to go make a trade outside the org for another bullpen arm to add to this bullpen.
Yeah. And you texted me today. It seems more and more you'd be more and more comfortable with shelling out what it would cost to get Ryan Helsley at this moment, based on what we have seen.
Because stud bullpens are just so important when you get into the stretch of the final part of the regular season, and even more importantly, the postseason. You've got to have bullpen guys back there, like multiple, 4, 5, 6, that you absolutely trust with your life and rely on. And they're piecing together a lot of games right now. Now, again, if we get to October and you've got Munoz, you've got Santos, you've got Gabe Spire, you've got Logan Evans, you've got Sauce, you've got, like that's a good foundation. But even with all of that, I think they still need an additional piece outside the organization. And yes, I've said that trading a lot to go get a reliever like Ryan Helsley, as good as he is, oftentimes is not the route Jerry Dipoto tends to go. And it also feels like you would have to give up some really high-level pieces to go get a guy that's going to pitch an inning a night. But the more this season goes on, the more it just seems like you need another real high leverage arm. Even if it's not Helsley specifically, there's other guys out there, right? We've talked about the Mariners could trade back for Paul Sewald. We've talked about a couple of the guys from the Nationals, like Hunter Harvey. But again, with everything they already have in-house, because there is room for this bullpen to get better, and it should get better as the weeks go on, as guys get healthy and some of these guys from the minors get called up. Even with all that, I think they got to go add somebody else too.
Yeah, and there's a couple names floating in here. Pete Fairbanks is thrown in here. Jordan Romano's thrown in here. Another name I'm curious because I saw it thrown in the, and we talked about him a little bit in the off season. Yeah, I think this would be a bit more of an expensive option, but it would work out. Speaking of trading with the Astros, could you go trade for someone like Ryan Presley?
We've talked about this before. He has struggled badly. Yeah. Do you want him?
Well, do you feel like you don't need him to be great for 100 innings? You need 20 good innings. Can you get 20 good innings? I think the Mariners are pretty confident in their ability to turn relievers around. So if they made that trade, then the answer to that question is yes.
But if you're going to go out and get a reliever, don't you want somebody you already rely on rather than trying to put together a project? Ryan Presley entered today with a 4.81 ERA, and he gave up more runs today.
Yeah. He does have a very long track record of success. I'm talking about small sample of success. Can you get, 15 times 3? 40. Can you get 45 good outs out of him? Can you do that? That's what you need. You boil it down. So if they decide that, he wouldn't cost that much, first of all. Second of all, a really long track record of success. You wouldn't have to give up anything for him. A, he makes a lot of money, and B, he's old, and he's on an expiring contract. So if you really think that you could turn him around, then yeah, I think that would be a smart idea. If the peripherals are there for you to tweak something and turn him around. Because he's not the only Astro struggling this year. Let's be right. It's not just him.
No, it's not. But I like the names that we've been throwing out previously more than him. I like the idea of Romano. I like the idea of Harvey. I like even somebody like Pete Fairbanks. I would be much more open-minded to those guys than I would a very much aging Ryan Presley, who's had a phenomenal career as a reliever, but it looks like the wheels are starting to fall off a little bit.
Yeah. Tanner Scott from Lions in the YouTube chat. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Pete Fairbanks, bring back Paul. Your brother says, bring back Paul, call up Logan Evans. I think that would be good. Yeah. I really, have we, someone says Aroldis Chapman? Probably not.
No. Yeah, that one doesn't seem like it's happening. Was it my brother that said him too, or no?
That said
Chapman?
what?
Was it my brother that just said Chapman too, or was it somebody else?
No, that was somebody else. I was just
Okay.
rolling through on
Uh,
multiple.
here's my take on that, because that's not the first time I've seen somebody throw that out there. One, the Pirates are still contending, and they actually have a core that's starting to come together, and, that goes without saying with Paul Skeens, with Jared Jones, with O'Neal Cruz. They're starting to really form something in Pittsburgh, so I'm guessing they're trying to compete. Also, Aroldis Chapman's old. I know he still throws hard, but he's aging. He had a terrible postseason last year. And also, if you listen to Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander talk, they talk a lot about bringing in guys that not just are good players, but are really going to mesh in the clubhouse, and guys that I guess they really call like good people, and people that they really think like bring up the organization. I don't know if Aroldis Chapman exactly qualifies into that category. So he feels like he'll be farther down the totem pole.
No, yeah. I'm 100% with you there. I don't think he fits the character bar that you have to clear to be a Seattle Mariner. So
Uh-huh.
I think that gets eliminated. Here's another interesting one. If the Mariners were to link up with a trade with the Blue Jays, Calum on YouTube says, I think the Jays would trade Yimi Garcia in a package with Vlad or Bo. Now
Mm.
that could be something.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Garcia is another good reliever. Doesn't he? Is it said?
Is it Jimmy?
It's obviously spelled Yimi, but I thought it's just. Oh,
Yeah,
I've
you're
heard
right.
people
No,
say.
it is Jimmy. Jimmy.
Okay, yeah,
Jimmy, I think.
yeah,
The
and
pronunciation Jeemee. Jimmy Garcia.
and he's
But yeah,
been.
he's been pretty awesome this year.
Mhm.
So he's got a whip of .7, a 2.16 ERA in 24 appearances. Yeah, that's a win. If you are swinging for the fences with the Toronto Blue Jays, why not? I mean, you're already going to be giving up a lot if those are the guys you're going after. So why not cover all your bases?
I honestly think it would be more likely to see the Mariners trade with the Blue Jays for some package of Danny Jansen and Jimmy Garcia, rather
Mm.
than Vladdy and Jimmy Garcia. I just don't think the Mariners are gonna give up the package it's gonna cost for as good a hitter as Vladdy is, a first baseman, as we've talked about, with basically no defensive value, no value on the base paths, costs a lot of money, and will cost a lot of prospects. When I know Ty France is gonna be on the shelf for a couple weeks now, but he's really hitting. And we'll see what Locklear does in the next few weeks too, because if he hits, those guys are both going to be on the roster. If Locklear plays well in the next few weeks, him and Ty are both going to be on the roster, because if Locklear's bat is too valuable to send back to the minors, he's sticking around. And then you have two first basemen on your roster paired with Mitch Garver. So if that happens, I don't think you're trading for a first baseman. I think you're trading for an outfielder. Or in this case, like I said, a backup catcher. So it would be Danny Jansen, who we've talked about, could make a lot of sense. And you go trade for, Jimmy Garcia.
Yeah. There's another thing too that I was thinking about with Locklear coming up today. If he hits, that kind of throws the Danny Jansen idea out, though, right?
Oh, that's
Because
true.
you would need a DH, you need the DH spot open, given Ty France comes back to rotate Mitch Garver, who's had a really good start to this month, who the Mariners really need hitting, and he looks a lot better this month. Smaller sample, but he looks much, much better at the plate. And if he's hitting, the Mariners would not give up someone to do exactly what he does. And, the book's out on Locklear. I think you and I will talk about Tyler Locklear on Wednesday's episode. Make sure to download, watch it on YouTube when it comes out on Wednesday. So we'll go a little bit more in depth there. But you and I both. But if he ends up proving us wrong and he mashes over the 3 to 4 weeks, Ty France is out, then that renders the need for Danny Jansen sort of irrelevant, because at that point, Ty comes back and Sebi Savala is probably the one who goes off the roster. You have your two catchers and you have your two first basemen / DH.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So in that case, maybe the Danny Jansen thing doesn't happen, and that makes sense. And somebody just threw in JD Martinez here. He's in the same category where if Locklear hits and Ty comes back, you're probably not trading for a guy like JD Martinez who's going to be a DH. If you're talking about a headline impact bat that they're going to go get at the deadline, I keep circling back to this. With all the circumstances considered, the guy that continues to make the most sense in my head, despite the strikeouts, is probably Brent Rooker. That seems to be the one that makes the most sense between the club control, between the power, between the fact that he will not cost you what the White Sox are asking for Luis Robert. That seems to be the one that makes a lot of sense.
Do you think the Dodgers would trade back Teoscar Hernandez? I think that's the same profile.
You know he would come back here and go back to striking out 32% of the time, not hitting home runs, and swinging at sliders in the other batter's box.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
but yeah, I'm with you. Rooker or another step down of corner outfit. Like Rooker, I think is on the top level by him, not by himself, because Kyle Tucker's out there too.
oh,
but again, that one's just sort of that's the best one. Next step is Rooker, and then we get to the like Michael Confortos of the world.
Sorry, I forgot to mention Kyle Tucker because you guys are in here throwing Kyle Tucker in the chat. So we hear you guys. We're glad we're getting through to you guys. We're glad you're joining the movement. Keep the movement going and root for Astros losses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that. So those are the tiers. So that's sort of what it feels like right now. Makes the most sense.
Right. But yeah,
corner right-handed hitting corner outfielder. And it'll be interesting to see how these next 2 months pan out for the Mariners left-handed hitting corner outfielders too. So Luke Raley hasn't played as much here over the couple of weeks, but he's had a good month so far. Mm-hmm. Like Mitch Garver, small sample, but he's hit well this month. Dom Canzone's been struggling a little bit. I don't know if he has like an infinite leash. He still has plenty of options. The Mariners could decide that Tacoma is a more realistic option for Dom Canzone, in which case you would need another left-handed hitting outfielder. Different options. Again, that's where a Michael Conforto would come in. And that would lead to what we talked about on Friday's episode, where if it depends what level of contention the Giants think they'll be at. And someone like Michael Conforto is not that expensive. He's not going to defend at a high level, but the dude hits. He's hit everywhere he's been, and low contacts. High contact, a lot of line drives, walks a bunch, decent power. That would work out. Yeah, and he's a Pacific Northwest guy, as Gmo44 points out. PNW guy coming back home.
Great. He is a Redmond guy, as we talked about on the pod, and yeah, as Gmo says in the comments, he is from Seattle. Who else is getting thrown in here? Lane says Brian De La Cruz from Miami. I don't think he hits enough. I think they need a guy who's going to come in here and you're going to rely on that can really, really hit. So De La Cruz flashes sometimes, but when you're a 100 WRC plus guy, I just don't think that's enough in terms of what the Mariners are looking for. Like if you're talking about trading for 2 bats and he's the secondary bat behind somebody else, maybe. I'd still say maybe, but it's pretty clear at this point. Again, they need to go out and get an impact bat, and again, they'll probably, that's the minimum. I think they've got to go out and make a splash trade for an impact bat at the deadline. What are you laughing at?
Well, Sour Vanilla on YouTube says we're being too optimistic. Probably still holding out for Ohtani, huh? The answer to your question, Sour, is yes. Yes, we are. Some way, somehow, there's an opt-out in his contract to come north.
Listen, I still don't know how he didn't take that 1-year, $65 million deal here.
That sounded like a pretty good deal to me.
I mean, because, that was a super real report. If you can trust any source, there's 2 places to go. It's here, Marine Lair Pod, and it's Reddit.
Yeah. Oh, man, I miss
that was. I just want you to know, for the people that still send comments in here about Ohtani this, and you guys were still on the Ohtani hype train. I want you to know that episode we filmed talking about how would a 1-year, $65 million deal ever happen for Shohei was one of my favorite episodes we ever filmed. Sadly, the next day he signed for $700 million with the Dodgers, but yeah.
Well, we forget about that part. Let's live in the moment, Lyle.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Who
else? Who else has got
Lars Newbar's thrown out there. Brandon Nimmo is thrown out there too. How is Nimmo hitting this year?
He's still been solid. He hasn't quite been prime Brandon Nimmo, but last time I checked, he's still in that 115, 120 WRC plus range. He's still expensive though. How much of that contract would the Mets eat if they were going to send it?
118 WRC plus. Well, the Mets are at a position right now where they will, blanking right now, blanking on a thought, where they would eat more money for prospects like they did at the deadline last year.
Listen, if they're going to actually think about trading Brandon Nimmo, so when we started this podcast, it was a year prior that we were banging the drum to go shell out whatever money it took to go get Marcus Semien, right? Now, we weren't podcasting back then, but the two of us were adamant about that. They didn't do it. When we just started this podcast, I'm guessing most of you weren't around at the very, very start of this thing, first 10 episodes, let's say. We could not have emphasized the Brandon Nimmo idea enough. I still love Brandon Nimmo as a player. If he's healthy, and that was always a caveat for him, he walked, he gets a little bit of power, he plays good defense. There's a lot to love about Brandon Nimmo. If there was a way for the Mariners to trade for him and not have to eat his entire contract, because he's on a long deal, it's 8 years, and he's only on the second year of that contract, I would still be very interested. It's just a matter of will the Mets actually give him up, and how much money are they willing to eat?
Sent us a super chat, Lyle. So let's hear what he has to say. So his idea, Michael Kopech, who's been fine this year, a little bit below average WAR-wise for the White Sox, and Tommy Pham for Jonathan Clase. I don't know if Jonathan Clase nets you. Does it net you both of them?
It's a good question. It's not like you're trading for huge name, huge impact players. Now, to get both of them for Class A, you might need to add in a little bit more. But in terms of the headline that would go back in return, I don't think you'd have to give up somebody with higher upside than Class A. Let's put it that way. Look, Michael Kopech has great stuff. Like you said, he's been slightly below average this year. And Tommy Pham, who signed a deal late with the White Sox this year, has hit. He's been a I don't want to say a star bat, but he's been an impactful bat. He's been around a 110 WRC plus hitter. So maybe put Class A in a trade and some other lottery ticket, and that might get it done. Sure.
Yeah, I think so. It wouldn't be all that much. You're right. Yeah, Tommy Pham at this point would give you what you would need in a corner outfielder. Yeah, and Kopech's had good years in the past too, and his expected ERA is below 4. So it would be it would be the same idea as a Ryan Presley, except younger and cheaper.
And I'll say this, for any of you out there that like to see fights in baseball, the Mariners trade for Tommy Pham. Their Vegas odds of getting in a fight this year skyrocket up.
Yeah, and that's honestly more fun. I like it that way, as long as no one gets hurt or suspended. We got another one from Terrell Rice. Will Jerry now prioritize stud arms or a bat at this point at the deadline? Terrell, again, thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Shout out to you, Terrell. Shout out to you, Jacob. We appreciate it a ton. Thanks for supporting the channel. I can't believe, like, the fact we're debating this now is kind of where we're at, right? I think, and I'm really having to sit and think about this. It's a good question. I would still say bat. It's close, but I would say bat.
I would say bat too. Maybe it depends on level of arm. If you're talking like mid-level reliever, then that actually might come first, because I think that would be something that would be more available now than the stud bat you need, because we're talking about sort of different tiers. I feel like the Mariners think when they get healthy, they have the perhaps top level arms they need with Santos, Munoz, a healthy version of Gabe, who was in here, by the way, earlier. Not sure if he's still watching, but shout out to you, Gabe. Hope you get well here soon. Healthy Taylor. Okay, if we get 2.5 upper echelon relievers out of that, like combined at any given point, can we get 2 guys who we trust to face the middle of the lineup at the end of the game? And I think the answer to that question is yes. But maybe that last guy, that middle reliever, the guy that you would put in, whether you're trailing by a run or two, that you want to keep the game close, or that you're throwing in there in the 6th inning or the 7th inning early on in the bullpen's workday, would be someone important and someone they could get right now. So I think it would be that. But overall, yes, they need a bat
Yeah.
more. Right. That's my
And
long answer on that.
and I feel bad. We got to get into a better habit of doing this year. But Trent Thornton's in that same group of guys that's also been very effective. Now, I'm not saying all year he's going to pitch in super high leverage once you get Santos back, once you get Gabe back, once you get, if Munoz stays healthy. But he's a part of this bullpen, that's for sure. And he's an important piece of it because, I don't think he gets appreciated enough by some fans. I mean, you should never judge anything by discourse on Twitter. So that's not how I'm going to judge this. But Trent Thornton's come into some big situations this year. The Mariners have used him in a lot of leverage, and he's done a lot of things well. I've always liked his stuff. I think he's got good stuff. His ERA is 3.6. His FIP's even lower. Like his FIP's almost 100 points lower than his ERA, showing that he's probably been a product of some bad luck at times this year too. Yeah, like that's another guy that's going to factor into their plans too. And that's why I think when it's all said and done, bats here are more important to go trade for than bullpen arms because there is more they can do in-house to put together a really good bullpen than what they can do to add bats. Because again, in-house by, let's say, August, you could have a bullpen of Andres Munoz, Gregory Santos, Gabe Spire, Taylor Saucedo, Trent Thornton, that's 5. Ryan Stanek is 6. Logan Evans is 7. And then somebody else is in that 8 spot, whether it's somebody that's still in this bullpen right now, like Voth, like Bauman. If you call up Troy Taylor at some point, and this is if everybody's healthy, that's a good bullpen. That's a very good bullpen, to be honest with you, assuming everybody's healthy. There is more you can do in-house without making a trade for a bullpen arm to fix this bullpen than you can do in terms of improving the offense. There are not bats that are coming up this year, aside from Tyler Locklear, that are going to elevate this offense. Even if Cole Young or Harry Ford hit so well that they get called up at the tail end of the year, that's the tail end of the year. So,
Yeah.
You're going to have to go outside the org and find a bat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay. So let's find some really going to be a catcher. Doesn't seem like he will end up being not his actual major league position. I think he is going to be a catcher because I think that's where a lot of his bat's very valuable. But what makes Harry Ford a top 30 prospect right now is the fact he's a catcher and a young one.
Right. Yeah. Look, it's a good problem to have. If Harry Ford gets to the big leagues and he's ready to go, and you have Cal Raleigh, you figure it out. You can let Cal Raleigh get a lot more days of DH. That'd be great. Cal needs time off his feet. I'm not saying you let Cal stop catching because Cal's a great catcher, but it would allow him to not have to get so beat up back there. And then you could give Harry Ford some days at DH. In a pinch, I don't think they're going to do this with Harry Ford before he gets to the big leagues, but in a pinch, if you need Harry Ford to go play left field because you want both of them in the lineup and Cal's behind the plate that day, Harry Ford can go play left field. I mean, he could probably learn to play second base too, but that'll probably take more time to learn. So I think Harry Ford is going to stay as a catcher, and the Mariners will make it work if him and Cal are up at the same time, healthy and productive, because, like you said, that's where his value is. So
Lane here on Instagram. I don't know. I'll frame the question to you is this way. Would you rather trade Canzone or Jonathan Clase?
no, I'd rather trade Clase because let's keep in mind, I know Dom's scuffling a little bit right now, but he is much, much closer to a polished big league bat than I'd say Clase is. Not only has he had more time in the big leagues, but he's got much more power than Clase. I think he's got a better pure hit tool than Clase. And the organization raved about Dom Canzone all offseason. When he got into spring, all the work he had done, how much better he looked. He was hitting lefties in the spring, and he got off to such a good start, remember? I think that's gotten lost on people all of a sudden. The first few weeks of the year, he was the best hitter on the team. And then he got hurt crashing into the wall. I don't think he's still injured or anything like that. But again, when you miss time working back to getting the amount of at bats you need when you haven't had that much big league time already to begin with, it takes time. I know he's scuffling right now. I like, am I gonna sit here and promise you that at some point he doesn't see a little bit of time in Tacoma? No, because like you said, TJ, I don't think he has an infinite leash. Like at some point he's gonna have to start hitting here. But I think he is so much more important to what the team's future plans are offensively and what he brings to the table offensively than Clase. And I like Clase. I like the fact he can run. I like the fact he's a crazy fast runner. But I think in terms of the overall production a guy can give you, I think Canzone's bat has the higher ceiling.
And I think what Canzone offers is more valuable to what the Mariners need than what Jonathan Clase does. Like Jonathan, he's got amazing speed, but that's really the only tool he has on Canzone, because while Canzone's not the best athlete in the world, Clase's not a great defender in the outfield. You can't stick Clase in center field and say, okay, well, he's going to patrol out there. He's not great. He hasn't been great on defense. I mean, he showed some interesting routes with the Mariners covering out there in the outfield. So if you get the higher upside bat with Dom, you can probably make up for speed in other areas rather than sacrifice whatever the upside would be with Dom Canzone's bat. I would be hesitant to trade Dom Canzone. I think they're trying to invest in Dom and see if it pays off in the long term. And he was kind of a lottery ticket when you're acquiring him for Paul Sewald along with the other guys. You're hoping, hey, like this guy has good peripherals. It's like when we traded for Mitch Haniger, can he work out? Because Mitch Haniger was a lottery ticket that panned out. You weren't sure if it was going to hit, but it did end up hitting, and it hit like fantastically for you. And I think they're hoping the same thing happens with Dom, and they're willing to give it a little more time. I'm going to reset this before we get to another question. Everyone, if you didn't hear the intro, welcome in Marine Lair Podcast Sunday Night Live. We're live here on YouTube and Instagram every single Sunday night at 7 o'clock Pacific. If you're watching us on Instagram, I see 35 of you in there right now. We love all of you. If we're over on YouTube too, if you're not subscribed, I know we have a lot of Instagram followers who are not subscribed to our YouTube page. Go head on over to some great content on our YouTube page. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and same to those of you watching on YouTube. If you're not following us on Instagram, head over to Instagram, give us a follow us on all of our socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Marine Layer Pod. You can find us on all those platforms, posting every single day. And if you really want us to answer one of your questions, head over to YouTube like Terrell and Jacob did earlier. You can send us a super chat and we'll be sure to get to your question.
Yeah. Let's see what else we've got. I know Instagram stuff's still flowing in here. Cameron said on YouTube, you guys may have mentioned it, but bullpen help with Logan Evans, question mark. Yes. Like we've talked about it a little bit on this live stream, but that's going to happen. That's been reported at this point that he's been transitioned from a starter's role to a reliever's role in the minors. They're gearing him up to get to the majors. It could be as soon as the All-Star break. They said that he gets up. So not only could that give that bullpen a real shot in the arm, because Logan Evans is a 6-7 pitch guy, as we've talked to him about. He can throw 99, 100 miles an hour if he's in the bullpen and he's going all out and blowing all out for one inning at a time. You could ramp it up even higher. We'll see. That's an arm that could really, really help. And that's our guy. He was actually in here earlier too. So I don't know if he's still in here. That was a while back. He jumped in. But Logan, if you're still in here, we're looking forward to seeing you in Seattle. We're looking forward to seeing what you can do with this bullpen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Logan, question: if you're still in here, how many pitches would you throw if you're in the bullpen? Like, does your arsenal shrink? Do you throw 7 out of the bullpen? Because I don't feel like you get enough pitches to fully utilize that arsenal.
I heard Divish talking about that. He was saying that he would use all 6 pitches out of the bullpen.
Wow. That's insane. Because I feel like, now I'm not a former pitcher, but I would feel like, especially when you only got, 15, 20 pitches in a bullpen outing, you'd want to get a feel for a few of them first before you start mixing in all the other ones. Because if you just break it down by the math, that's you throw 1 pitch like twice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give or take.
Sure. But look, whatever's going to keep people off balance. So yeah, let's put it like this. Logan knows himself and his stuff way better than we do. So if he thinks it's going to work, I'm not going to be the one to sit here and tell him it's not going to.
Right. Bob asks on YouTube, not totally Mariners related, but I think it does relate to the Mariners and what they could do right now. Why do we think the Marlins were so quick to trade Luis Arraez, as he probably never would have been a hot trade chip, but are holding on to others that the Mariners could use, like Tanner Scott, so tightly?
I think the Marlins traded away Luis Arraez insanely early because they're a really bad franchise and don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I
That's a good
I
answer.
yes. Like, if the Marlins knew what they were doing, Luis Arraez would still be on the roster. They'd package him at the deadline, and honestly, they
And they
probably
get
would've
way
got
more.
I was gonna say, you would've gotten way more back for Arraez than what the Padres gave up to get him.
Yeah. So, Bob, I hope that answered your question because I think when that Arise trade happened, most people had the reaction of like, why did they just trade him? Especially, you're not making the playoffs, but it doesn't matter. Hold on
Right.
to him for 2 more months and then trade him.
Right.
But no. No. How about a trade for Jerks and Profar if the Padres collapse? Aiden on Instagram.
Isn't it crazy that now after all these years, and he's had flashes of having some good stretches, but all of a sudden Jerks and Profar, at least here in 2024, is playing to the level of the guy he was once hyped up to be as this ultra prospect. Guy's got a WRC plus above 160. Like, he's doing it all of a sudden. It's taken him a long time because he's now 31 years old. When he came up at 19, people thought he was going to be the next huge thing, but he's really hitting. Now, would the Padres trade him? I don't think so. They're competing right now. That they have a wild card spot right now. So I don't unless to the question says, unless they absolutely collapsed, I don't see it.
He got cut last year.
Mhm.
Last year was the last time he was cut. It's pretty incredible.
Listen, we can't go a full live stream without bringing up 2 names. Brought up Kyle Tucker. Shout out to you guys. The more we speak it into existence, the better chance we have to have it happen. So keep speaking it into existence because we will. And number 2, this is from Spencer. This is from my brother. Bring me Abe with question marks. How about that, Tej? We can't go live stream without saying it. He said, like, the people want Abe.
I don't. I must not be the people then.
Well, but the people, not you, but the field, the rest of the people do.
Well,
Come on, Teach. He's got like a 110 WRC plus.
will it be above 100 by August 1st?
No, you can't deny his greatness.
Oh, I can, and I will.
Do you want Abe Toro? Yes or no? If you're watching, drop us a comment and let us know. But
yeah, that's the question I think everyone's dying to know. Not will the Mariners trade for Luis Roberts? No, will the Mariners trade for Abraham Toro? That's what everyone's here for.
What other question? Oh, I just scrolled back up. This is from Brooks. Can we trade this heart attack games for some easy ones? Well, that's a 2-part answer for me. Number 1, I sure hope so, because that was the most strenuous weekend of baseball I've watched, I think, since that Astros playoff series. I mean, like I said at the start of this live stream, I'm exhausted. Like, watching those 3 games legitimately not just, like, broke me having to watch these 3 games this weekend, but it is just tire me beyond belief. Like, I've got so little, like, capacity left from this weekend. I need a recharge. So, part number 2 to that answer to your question, Brooks, they do play the White Sox at home for 4 games, so I would hope they're about to trade in some easy ones.
Yeah, they better. This is an interesting one to respond to. Let's talk Teoscar and the disaster of letting him walk has been. That's from Wick on Instagram.
Say this
I
again?
thought all of us were pretty much in unison letting him walk.
What's the question again? Say it one more time.
So Wick on Instagram says, let's talk Teoscar and the disaster letting him walk has been.
Oh, no, the Mariners did the right thing. I put out a tweet this weekend because it was after the Saturday loss. It was, a day after they had collapsed on Friday. The Yankees and Dodgers were playing. Diehard baseball fan. I was like, look, it's an awesome series. I want to be in front of a TV and watch it. I was watching it. And Teoscar hit a grand slam right in front of my eyes. That was a lot of fun. No, the Mariners did the right thing. They should not have given him the QO of the $20+ million it was going to cost. I didn't think bringing him back on some long extension made much sense. He was striking out a ton. Defense wasn't great. Wasn't said he didn't love hitting in Seattle. His road home splits in Seattle versus the road were drastic. I don't think it made that much sense. I'm not shocked to see he's gone and signed with the Dodgers and doing this. I think it was just about as predictable as you could have possibly drawn up. But I don't think the Mariners made the wrong move letting him go. I think Teoscar needed the change of scenery to get back to being Teoscar Hernandez. So, it sucks it didn't work out. I think the Mariners could have used a lot more out of him last year, and the season could have looked a lot different if he had played like the way they were hoping he was going to play. But no, I don't think the Mariners made the wrong decision not bringing him back. I'm with you on this. I think we were in unison in the sense of it didn't make sense to bring him back.
And let's add in some context. So yes, he's hitting well with the Dodgers, but he also has the 3 most valuable players in baseball hitting in front of him. So
Right. And
that usually helps someone's
when you have 3
confidence.
guys, I was going to say, when you have 3 guys that might all be first ballot Hall of Famers sitting in front of you, that can help.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think so too. I think you could put up 100 WRC plus in the Dodgers lineup.
well, that would involve average Joes getting hits off big league pitching, but you never know. Okay, you know what? While we're on the topic of former Mariners, we've got to debunk this too. Javier says we made the wrong move letting Gino go. Look, let me preface this. We've talked about this before. Let me preface this by saying Eugenio Suarez is universally loved. You hear Scott Service rave about him. You hear all his teammates rave about him. You hear how much he was, all the fans loved him, and for good reason, very good reason. Eugenio Suarez is one of the most vibrant personalities you can find, and people were really sad to see him go. I get it. If we are objectively talking about a baseball standpoint, Eugenio Suarez has a WRC plus right now of about 70. In English terms, if you guys don't look at metrics like that, he is 30% below league average as a hitter right now, and Josh Rojas has been significantly better on defense. I love Gino, but letting him go was not the wrong move.
It might have seemed like the wrong move in the moment, but no. No, it was not. The Mariners knew, and what we had read about is they were concerned. I don't know if it was a total concern over his off seasons. They were concerned about his bat speed, and and he also moves away from Perry Hill defensively, and his defense falls off a little bit. So it stinks, right? And the Diamondbacks have a great guy, but in a vacuum, the Mariners made the right move, and their third base collection of players that they've thrown over there this season has been better than what Gino's done this season. He had a good first good first week, not a good first month, a good first week. And then since then it's not been great. So this is not one of those trades where not one of those trades where you can say, oh, the Mariners made a mistake moving on from Gino. No, I don't think so. It's the same thing as saying, did the Mariners make a mistake moving away from Jared Kelenic? Monetarily, yeah, that trade was the wrong decision. But Lyle, you can put earmuffs over. Was that a wrong decision for the Mariners to move on from Jared Kelenic right now, baseball wise? No,
not if the relationship on both sides was totally burned and they just really thought, okay, it's not going to work out here. Now, I will say, Jared Kelenick's rocking about a 720 OPS right now. The Mariners kind of use about like that in their lineup these days. But again, domino effect. That could be because he's playing in Atlanta under a new coaching staff, under a lineup that protects him a little bit more, all these things. So, yeah, I would understand more people's gripes about letting Kelenic go than letting Gino go. Because when we talked about at the time of the trade, Kelenic still has 5 years of club control. He's still young. I get, and it was warranted why people were mad about that when it happened. And if you're still mad about it now, okay. But like the bat speed thing with Gino is real. We saw it happen last year. Like people put together these compilation videos of him really just whipping through a lot of elevated fastballs in the strike zone. He wasn't catching up to it. I think the bat speed thing was real, and you're seeing it results wise in Arizona. It sucks. I root for nothing but the best for Gino, but that is what's happening. So I don't think the Mariners made an unsound baseball move by letting him go.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you there. And all these things we can say hindsight, oh, we were right, we were wrong, whatever. But they're not Mariners anymore. So to be honest, even if Teoscar's crushing it with the Dodgers, where this whole point started, just doesn't matter as much. Now is what we try and, we're trying to now improve for the future. So
Okay, we'll do a couple more questions before we wrap up here. I will say there's now a couple in the chat here on Instagram, so let's get to it. This is from Christian Copeland. We talk about how good Tyler Locklear looked today. Yes, we can. As somebody who's been very excited to see a Tyler Locklear call up, we will. Now, let me preface this by saying I am not happy that the call up happened because Ty France was injured. I wanted to see Locklear just get called up to augment the offense and pair along with Ty France. So the circumstances in which he was called up sucks. But how he looked in his first game, oh yeah. How can you not be excited? Not only does he double a one-hopper off the wall the opposite way in a clutch situation to give the Mariners the lead late in the game, but the at-bat before that, he's facing one of the best starters in the American League in Cole Reagans. He stayed right on a changeup, just below the zone, out of the zone, right on it, and flew out about 400 feet. That was his first Major League Baseball game, facing one of the game's best starters, and he did not look overmatched. He struck out in his first at-bat, sure, but for his first game, I don't know how you couldn't love what you saw through one game of his big league career.
If we look at the profile of like really what he is, I don't know if the Mariners have called up a more complete hitting prospect. I mentioned earlier in the live stream, I'm still not totally sure he's ready. I think he should. Yeah, I would feel better if he had more AAA games because the reality is he had this year had a 26% strikeout rate in AA, which is well above average. And then you extrapolate that to the big league level. What is that going to look like facing significantly better pitching with guys who can all locate, unlike AA? And then you add on top of that, he'd only faced 10 games worth of AAA pitching, the level above that. And you have a right to be concerned with that. But if we're just talking about the profile overall, Julio's his own special animal when it comes to getting called up and as a type of prospect, because he was a phenom getting called up. And that's different. But if we're just talking about the profile of Tyler Locklear, I mean, we're talking about a 21% strikeout rate, a 12% walk rate, hitting for a high average, walking a lot, slugging quite a bit in the minor leagues, while, again, not whiffing all that much. It's a very rare combination to have in a first baseman. So there's total reason to be excited about the type of hitter Tyler Locklear, and he got some Pete Alonso comps when he was drafted out of VCU 2 years ago after they drafted Cole Young in the first round. So there is really a lot to get excited about because it just doesn't feel like the Mariners have added a prospect like this to their big league roster that has this sort of hitting profile.
No, not since Julio was called up, not since Kelnick was called up. As we know, the Mariners are built on pitching. That's their foundation. Some of like the exciting call-ups for the most part they've had over the last handful of years, it's been a lot of starters and it's been a lot of bullpen arms. You know, when Munoz got here, when Brash got here, there was excitement, but a lot of pitchers. I mean, TJ's right. The thing with Kelnick and Julio too is they were so young, right? That sometimes there is a bit of a I don't want to say growing pains, but just an adjustment period for young guys when they get up, which we saw with Julio. We definitely saw it with Kelnick. But I'm interested to see what it looks like for Locklear because what they definitely have not seen is this polish of a bat. You're right that Julio is a phenom in itself and kind of in his own category. But Tyler Locklear has not had many points of his baseball career where he struggled to hit. He crushed it in college. He crushed it at every level of the minor leagues. He had a good stint in the fall league. This is a guy that has put in his time, gotten his share of at bats. Yes, he didn't get a ton in AAA, but has hit every level of the minor leagues and brings a profile that, for the first time in a while, in terms of Mariners call-ups, could really alter the offense in a positive way. Because again, you've got hit, you've got power, you've got ability to walk. There's not been a lot of Mariners call-ups in the last couple of years with guys who bring all that to the table immediately.
Yeah. Let's get one more question in here before we sign off here on another good Sunday and another hopefully more fun week of baseball coming up.
Yeah.
Here's a good one on a more historical note. Javier asks, worst trade of all time, Bedard for Adam Jones. Was that he says worst trade of all time. How about I frame it this way? Is that the worst trade do you think the Mariners have ever made?
Worst trade they've ever been involved in, or worse on their end? I'll tell you what, I can't imagine the Expos feel all that great about trading away Randy Johnson. So,
No.
if you're talking about a trade the Mariners have been in, I think there's some ones they've benefited from. The worst trade the Mariners have made that has hurt them, that's the one I always circle back to. Because here's the thing, it wasn't just Adam Jones. It was Adam Jones, Chris Tillman, and George Sherrill. George Sherrill George Sherrill was a good bullpen arm when he was in Seattle. He had good years in the bullpen in Baltimore. Chris Tillman had a handful of really good years as the number 2 starter type in Baltimore. The Mariners could have used desperately over some of the years where he was pitching well. And then, yeah, Adam Jones or Eric Bedard. That trade, I don't think I'll ever get over that trade.
So that's a bad one. There's some other notable ones to highlight too. Adam Lind for Freddie Peralta, not looking very good for the Mariners.
No.
This one's cooled off a little bit, but Chris Taylor for Zach Lee was also not a great one. Sin-Soo Choo for Ben Broussard. Yep, that was a good one. Man, what some other... In theory, you would think that based on how Jesus Montero turned out, the Michael Pineda thing would have been it. If Michael Pineda didn't have injury issues and he also got kind of fat too, which didn't help him. But if he had lived up to what he was as a younger player, I think that would be in this category too. So there's a few good ones.
I'm trying to think if there's anything we're missing. I might be.
Oh, I have one. Kendall Graveman for Abraham Toro.
Oh, how could we forget? Oh, we forgot. What about the fact that Mariners traded for David Phelps in 2017 and gave up Pablo Lopez?
No, yeah, that's a similar one as the Freddie Peralta trade.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Man. Except you got less, I think, from David Phelps. You got 8 innings.
And it's similar because you just didn't know. When the Mariners traded Pablo Lopez, I think he had a 4-something ERA in the low levels of the minor leagues.
Sorry, we're forgetting the worst one. David Ortiz.
Yeah, that one's pretty
bad. Yeah. Oh,
okay. Here's a question. How would the Mariners have managed that if they had the 2 greatest DHs of all time on the same roster? Which one of them is playing atrocious defense on a nightly basis?
Doesn't matter because they're both going to crush. Stick Poppy at first. He played first base. Sometimes. When they went to a National League park, he played first. You know what? It's not like the mid-90s Mariners were known for their unbelievable defense. They were in center. But, were they regarded as the best defensive team of all time? No. So if you had a chance to add prime Big Poppy to, at this point, I guess the early 2000s Mariners, yeah, I think judging how Mariners first base had turned out throughout the 2000s and the multiple decades since then, I would say I think we would make room.
Yeah, and considering Edgar retired after 2004, then Poppy could have DH'd for the next 10 to 15 years. Yeah, that one's not great. That one's not great. So maybe that takes the cake. Who did the Mariners even get back in that trade? Because when they traded Poppy, he was so far away from the big leagues. I actually remember in the Dorktown documentary that the who was it, SB Nation did. He had a different last name back then, or at least at one point, right?
It was Arias.
Arias, yeah. So who did the Mariners give up?
Okay, they traded the Twins traded Dave Hollins to the Mariners for a player to be named later, and that was him.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Let's check in on Dave Hollins. How did he do?
I was about to look. In Seattle.
18 career WAR in Seattle. He pitched 1 season, 28 games.
No. Oh. He's a hitter.
Oh, a hitter, yeah. Oh, sorry. So he played 28 games. He was good, and 916 OPS, and then left.
28 games. Awesome.
Big Poppy for 28 games.
And might I add, the Mariners did not make the playoffs in 1996. So great.
Wow.
It's man, I'd love to see the look on the face of the Red Sox front office when they made that trade. Well,
it was the Twins.
Sorry, not the Red Sox. Yeah, the Twins. But then the Twins gave them up too. They probably don't feel great about it.
No.
No.
Oh, and we forgot about Veritek too.
Yeah. They should have made a Seinfeld episode. Well, it wouldn't have made any sense because it wasn't in New York, but I was gonna say they should have made a Seinfeld segment about, like, what the hell did you trade David Ortiz for rather than Jay Buhner for? So, I'm sure there's somebody in here other than my brother who knows the Seinfeld reference of, like, yeah, he's got 30 home runs, a rocket burn arm. It's like, you don't know what you're doing. And then George Steinbrenner's like, "Look, all my baseball people said Ken Phelps, Ken Phelps." And, in all reality, Ken Phelps did not exactly have a riveting career with the Yankees. And Jay Buhner, well, we all know what history says Jay Buhner did here. So that one worked out for the Mariners. Does it offset trading away David Ortiz? I don't know, but yeah, you could go down this list for a while.
I'm just trying to imagine, Lyle, that in the span of 15 years, the Mariners, you could argue, had the greatest center fielder of all time, the greatest shortstop of all time, the two best DHs of all time. Where else am I missing? One of the greatest pitchers of all time. Yeah, and then probably arguably, you could argue, one of the best
Yeah.
right fielders of all time. Yeah, sort of adds up now, doesn't it?
Mhm. They could use some of those guys on offense these days.
Hmm. Yeah, you know, it would be perfect if the Mariners jumped in a time portal and traded back for A-Rod.
Yeah.
Would work out.
And give him all the money he wants. Don't let him leave.
Sure. I'm down. That's what they should have done the first time.
Well, yeah. Yes, they should have. Does that about wrap it up?
Yeah, that was good. That was a good final one. That was a good final one to end on. Thank you guys all so much for watching again on YouTube and Instagram. We'll be right back here live on these two platforms a week from right now, 7 o'clock Pacific on the Marine Lair podcast, Sunday Night Live. Remember, go subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, all of our socials at Marine Lair Pod, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Sweet. That was our best one views-wise, I think.